Hey everybody, it's Miss 2S and I'm going to show you how you can model molecules at home because not all of us have super nifty modeling kits at home, but you can do this with some very simple household items. I've chosen to use dots because I like how they come in nice simple colors. They're really soft and squishy and easy to stick toothpicks into. So I'm going to use the dots candies of the 4 different colors as my different atoms. And I'm going to use toothpicks to represent the bonds. Before we can do this, we have to know the bonding rules for the 4 elements we're going to be using. So we're going to be using hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, and nitrogen. I'm going to use my red dots to represent hydrogen atoms, my green dots to represent carbon atoms, yellow for oxygen, and orange for nitrogen. So here you can see the element symbol. This is represented on the periodic table, my colors, and these are the number of bonds. So this is the rule that I'm going to have to make sure I follow whenever I form the models of my molecules. Any hydrogen atom is only allowed 1 bond. Carbon atoms have to have 4 bonds. Oxygen atoms have to have 2, no more, no less. And nitrogen atoms have to have 3, no more, no less. All right, so let's jump into our first model, which is to make a model of water using 2 hydrogens, which are red, and 1 oxygen atom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my oxygen because oxygen's the one that has to have 2 bonds. So it has to go in the middle. All right, oxygen has to have 2 bonds, so it has to go in the middle because hydrogens can only have 1. So once I put the 2 bonds on my oxygen, there are the 2 places where my hydrogen atoms have to go. This is the only way to make a water molecule with the 1 atom of oxygen and 2 atoms of hydrogen. Now, if we had a model kit, it would look a little bit different. The colors would be different and we'd see this bent shape here. It doesn't really matter what the shape is because we're just trying to figure out what is this molecule gonna sort of look like. So in our notebooks, we would be recording the fact that the name of this molecule is water. We would be drawing the model, and I just like to use the element symbol. So I draw O for oxygen, and then I have a bond with a hydrogen on one side and a bond with the hydrogen on the other side. And the formula is what the element symbols are put together to look like. And for water, you've probably seen this before, is H2O. The 2 refers to the hydrogens. So you can see that there's 1, 2 atoms. So that 2 refers to the H. And then there's that 1 oxygen. So this is the formula. H2O is the formula for water. All righty? So our next model, make a model with 1 carbon and as many hydrogens as possible. So in order to do this, you have to go to your chart and figure out how many bonds can carbon have. Does carbon have? Carbon has to have 4 bonds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 4 bonds into my carbon atom, which is my green dot. Okay, I'm going to put 4 bonds, and then it says as many hydrogens as possible. So I'm just going to put a hydrogen on the end of each one of these bonds. And that will give me my model. And there we have it. This is our model. 1 carbon and as many hydrogens as possible, which means 4 hydrogens because carbon has to have 4 bonds. So this is a model of a substance called methane. It is a gas. And now we're going to draw our model. We have the 1 carbon with the 4 hydrogens coming off of it like this. Each line represents my toothpick. And the formula for this would be CH4. So this 4 refers to the 4 H's we have in this molecule. All right. Next model. Make a model of a molecule with 2 hydrogens. You go ahead and give this a try. Pause your video and make the model on your own. So you probably have figured out that hydrogens can only have one bond, which means there's no other way to do this except to just stick them to each other like this. And voila, that is our model. This is a model of hydrogen gas. So this is elemental hydrogen gas. The model for how we're going to draw it out is just the two hydrogens with the one bond between them. And our formula, simple, because we only have one element. So this is an element because it only has one kind of atom in it. Even though there's two atoms, they're the same kind. So this is an element. All the other models we've made so far have been compounds. Okay? Next up, we have a model of two oxygen atoms, and oxygen is yellow for us. And it might seem really simple to just kind of do this. All right? However, we need to make sure that we're following the rules according to the bonding rules chart. Oxygen has to have two bonds. And the instructions don't tell us to add more atoms. So what we have to do is we actually have to add a bond in between those two atoms. So this is the model for oxygen, for a model with two oxygen atoms. And this is elemental oxygen or oxygen gas. And we draw our oxygen atom with the two lines to represent the two bonds. This is called a double bond. And our formula is O2. So in case you're wondering, well, Ms. 2S, you didn't tell me you can have more than one bond between atoms. I'm going to tell you, you can have up to 3 bonds between any two atoms. Okay, that's only if the bonding rules allow it. Hydrogen wouldn't be able to have a double bond because hydrogen can only ever have one bond. But there are some other elements that can have double and possibly up to 3 bonds between any two atoms. All right, next model. Make a model with one nitrogen and as many hydrogen atoms as possible. So here's your nitrogen. Look at your bonding rules. How many bonds can they make? Make your model and pause the video. So nitrogen, according to our table, can have 3 bonds. So I'm going to put those 3 bonds into my nitrogen, and then I'm going to go and it says add as many hydrogens as possible. So I'm just going to add hydrogens to the end of each of these bonds. And now I have my model. This is a model for a substance, a compound called ammonia. So in our notes, we're going to write down that this is called ammonia. And we're going to draw our model here. Nitrogen in the middle with the 3 hydrogens around it. And our formula is NH3. Ammonia is the stuff in Windex that smells gross. Okay. Next, we have make a model with 2 nitrogen atoms. So nitrogen is orange. So make a model with 2 nitrogen atoms. Go to your table, figure out the number of bonds, pause the video, and make your model. Now you should have gone to the table and found that nitrogen has to have 3 bonds. Well, if I only have these 2 atoms, that must mean that those 3 bonds are between those 2 atoms. And now we have a triple bond. Triple bond. Okay, this is elemental nitrogen because it's one kind of atom, so this is an element. So this is nitrogen gas. We draw 3 lines between the ends for our model to represent the triple bond. So I'm going to label that. This is a triple bond. And our formula is N2. And lastly, we're going to have one more model here. It says make a model with 2 carbons and as many hydrogens as possible. So 2 carbons and as many hydrogens as possible. So go to your table, figure out how many bonds, and then go ahead and get started. Pause the video and make your model. Now, in order to make this happen, the first thing you had to do was connect the carbons to each other. Because hydrogens can't have more than 1 bond, which means the carbons have to connect first. And then what you're going to do is you're going to add. So this carbon has 1 bond. You're going to add more hydrogens until this carbon gets to its 4 bonds. So now it has 2, 3, 4 bonds. Okay? This carbon has 1 bond, so it needs to get to 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is our model. All right? This is a substance called ethane. Okay? And the formula or the model for this on our paper, you draw the carbons first, and then you add in the 3 hydrogens around each of the carbons. This means that all of the atoms are following the bonding rules, and we've created an actual molecule. And the formula for this is C2, because I've got 2 carbons, H, and then you count up the number of hydrogens. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. C2H6. Because the 2 is referring to that carbon, the 6 referring to those hydrogens, and that is how we get this formula. All right? So thanks for tuning in, and I hope you learned a little bit about modeling molecules and the fact that you can do it at home. You don't have to have some fancy modeling kit. You can do it with anything you have sitting around your home. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.